Hello gel ballers, it's Dan here from Ausgel, and today we're going to be going through what you've all been waiting for, which is a test of those bad boys. So these are the new glow-in-the-dark gels. We do have access to them direct with the factory, which is fantastic. So we're going to do some testing on these today. Before we get into this though, just want to let you know, we do have them growing at the moment. So as at this part of the recording, the gels have been growing for about half an hour. So you guys won't see the wait. I'm just going to edit all this together so it looks like one seamless clip. Now, first thing that I've noticed with these gels is that they're actually pretty hard, a lot harder than what I thought they would be. The reason I thought they'd be soft is because I know that they're going to have some form of glow pigment in them. I know you can only see these three little dots just here, but take my word for it, they're quite hard. They feel very similar to the other white gels. The only difference with these is that they're a little bit bigger than your standard white milkies. I'd say, yeah, almost 3 mils in diameter, so pretty big. Now I know you're probably looking at this video thinking, Dan, why the hell are you wearing gloves, dude? Look, the reason for it is the last time I mucked around with glow-in-the-dark gels, for those that have been watching Ausgel for a while, you'll remember this little batch here where I used the powder. The stuff sticks to everything. It was really hard to wash out of my hands. I'm stuck to my clothes. My garage looks like a 90s rave party now. So the pigment was really messy to work with. I don't really know an awful lot about what these new glow-in-the-dark gels are composed of, beyond the fact that they would have some kind of phosphoric pigment in there. But just in case they're messy, I just don't want my hands covered in the stuff, because it gets really annoying at night when my missus laughs at me because I scratch my face and my face starts to glow. Alright, so first things first. I'm going to talk about glow-in-the-dark gels, the tests we've done on them in the past, and essentially where they've come from. So several months ago, Ausgel did some tests on glow-in-the-dark gels using a pigment glow-in-the-dark powder. You can purchase the stuff anywhere. It's on AliExpress, eBay. If you Google it, you're gonna find it. It's not too expensive. And all that I did previously was ultimately grab some clear gels and then coat them with powder while they were still a little bit wet. Now, with these, they worked really well. I did need to use a tracer unit, and I'll explain everything you need to know about tracer units soon. And they did glow. The problem was they made my blaster incredibly dirty, and it meant that every time I fired a mag, I would have to open up my magazine, clean it all out, open up my gearbox, and clean out my gearbox. Otherwise, your entire blaster starts to glow, and I know this pigment didn't really like the stuff that was lined in the inside of a Bruisemaster barrel, which is what I was running at the time. Nonetheless, you know, they looked really good, it was promising, but not very viable for gel ballers in today's market, because I can't think of one gel baller that would be willing to pull apart their blaster and clean their magazine and gearbox every single magazine. That's just horrendous. Wasn't going to happen. So this idea got kicked to the side, and these have just basically been sitting here for a long time. The other type of glow-in-the-dark gels that Ausgel have tried in the past are the ones that you probably are familiar with on AliExpress. So it's these yellow ones here. I'll try and get that a bit closer to the camera so you can see what they look like. So look, they're pretty big, but they're not that much bigger than these glow-in-the-dark gels that we grabbed from the factory now. Now, with these ones, the only issue was, this is the size that they grew to. I'll just get a couple out. So that's them there, and pretty bouncy. The other issue is that they didn't really glow too well. So to give you an idea of the size difference between these and a normal milky, there's a normal milky next to the AliExpress glow-in-the-dark that's currently available. Now what I can show you is how much it glows, because I have a UV light here. I'll just cover that over this gel for a little bit, and we'll see if it actually holds any glow. Even with the lights on, you should still be able to see something. And lo and behold, yeah, there's really nothing there. So these aren't grown yet by any means. But already you can see that there's a glow there just from covering it with my hands. Whereas this one here, well, there's really nothing. So these ones from AliExpress, garbage, do not buy them. It's a waste of money. Give them to your kids. I'm sure that they'd have a lot of fun throwing those ones around. And I think these ones are the potassium-based ones anyway that are used for plants and agriculture. So not really useful to us regardless of the size. Okay, now before we get too far into the gels themselves with measuring and weighing and all that sort of stuff, first thing I want to take you through is this little bad boy here. So that's a tracer unit. Now there are a number of different types of tracer units. To use glow-in-the-dark gels, people get confused and they think they just grab the gels, put them in water, chuck them in their magazine and they're good to go. That is not the case. It's very similar to airsoft glow-in-the-dark BBs where they need to be charged. Now, I'm told, I'm going to confirm this a little bit later once the gels are grown, but I'm told these hold their charge for 20 to 30 seconds. So once they're flashed with high-powered UV light, they'll hold that glow for 20 to 30 seconds, giving you enough time to watch the tracer fire off into the distance, or it'll eventually just dim and go black again. What these tracer units do is on the inside of them, they're lined with high-powered UV lights. So it's not like these. These things are too weak to use inside any kind of a hopper. So if you're looking at building something, don't just use a normal UV light. You need something high power. Now, the other thing these things have is a little sensor. So there's an end here that screws into the end of your barrel, and then about ½ an inch in, there's a sensor where every time a gel ball flies through, the sensor will go off and the UV light in there will flash. It'll just be a quick flash, and then you'll see your gel look like a little firecracker going at the end, which is pretty cool. As for how they're charged, I'll just show you that quickly. So on this particular model, which is made by Ace Tech, I can't remember the exact model number, and it's not written on here, but it's pretty generic. It's just called lighter, but it does the job. So you simply unscrew the end of this, and there's a micro USB port in the end there. Plug it in, charge it using your computer, your phone charger, whatever you have available. And I think from memory, this took about ½ an hour to charge up, and it's lasted, when I was doing all the testing, at least 30 odd mags. So that's going to keep you going for quite some time. So that's how you charge this particular model. Big thing to note with these is the majority of the tracer units, the thread that comes in there is a 14mm counterclockwise. It's very important that you remember 14mm counterclockwise. All right, so I'll show you how this thread's on. So it is a counterclockwise thread. Once I get this on, there we go, now it's threading on. Now remember, when you do thread these units on, you just want to be mindful of the fact that there is a sensor inside this, and if your barrel goes past the sensor, then your sensor's not going to be able to pick up when a gel ball's going through. So if you do find that you're not getting any glow on your gels, something you might want to try is just adjusting the flash hider by unscrewing it and just letting it go a little bit further out so you don't cover that sensor. All right, so that's how they look. The other alternative that's still being worked on at the moment is an Illuminating Magazine. So it's a magazine that has what is essentially a UV light inside the magazine. I do understand that the factory is having issues with that at the moment because gel balls are wet. So it's not like airsoft where you can essentially put the LED strips anywhere in the magazine because there's no wet in there, and wet doesn't go well with electricity. So something that I know the factory is still working on, but you will see them come out in the future. They will be a little bit cheaper than the tracer units, which is that suppressor that you've seen just before. But the thing is, these are a lot more convenient. You can take them off and switch back to normal gels and use the normal magazines that you've been using for everything else. So a little bit more expensive. I think they cost anywhere between sort of 90 and 110 bucks for a decent model. But at the end of the day, a worthwhile investment if you're going to go down the path of tracers. Okay, another thing you want to be prepared for is how you're going to make your blaster accurate, because as you would be well aware, the hop-up unit normally goes where the tracer unit is. Now, there isn't much space there, but there are alternatives. I've tested one, and I'm going to show you that now. And the reason I'm showing you this one is so that you don't get it, because the thing doesn't freaking work. Now, this one here is one that's available at AK Uncle on AliExpress and a few other areas. And having a look at it here, it looks like the end is supposed to be able to turn, or there's supposed to be some kind of a lip that covers these little slots, and there isn't. And the thing's very, very short as well. Not useful at all to gel ballers, because, I mean, this red inner barrel here is just a stock standard 27 centimeter polished aluminium barrel, which is relatively short. And the only other alternative for barrels is really, 12 to 17 centimeters for the real sort of short, snubby type setups for CQB. But that doesn't help us with this. So the only way I think, looking at this, you'd be able to achieve any hop is to actually cut back your barrel to cover a portion of that slot to actually give you a little bit of air friction. But then, you've got slots on both sides, and to me, just looking at this, it just looks messy. It's not something I would muck around with, and at the end of the day, just having a look at how it's built, I mean, this looks like it's built more for aesthetics and look rather than actual function. I did get excited about this because I thought we were going to be able to see a little bit of a hop on the end there, where we could then screw the tracer unit onto the thread on the end of this. So that's something I got really excited about, but unfortunately this doesn't work. There is an alternative. I'll try and remember to put a link in the description here for this, but there is a little friction tab that fits over the end of your barrel and fits in between that and whatever outer barrel you're running. Like, it's really, really skinny. So you could potentially have that running, but then I don't know how that's going to work with the sensor inside the tracer unit. So that's something that I'm sure China is engineering right now, and I'd imagine that a bunch of you guys out there in the community are coming up with your own ideas. But just remember, when you're coming up with the ideas, you have to use the high-powered stuff, not these dodgy little UV lights that just emit a UV light. You need stuff that's going to be high power, give a good shine to the glow-in-the-dark gels, and which will allow them to retain that glow for the 20 or 30 seconds that the manufacturer claims they can retain a glow for. Okay, now down to the nuts and bolts. So having a look at what we've got in front of us here, there are 10 glow-in-the-dark gels inside this little half teaspoon measurer. We've got a calculator to figure out the averages. We've got a 2 decimal point diamond scale here to figure out the weight. And then of course we've got the measuring calipers here to have a look at how wide they actually are ungrown. Okay, so first we're going to do the weight. So this is the weight of 10 glow-in-the-dark gels. So the weight there is 0.20 grams. So we will do 0.20 divided by 10, and 0.02 grams is what they weigh when they're completely dry. Now we'll do the actual diameter test. Now for the diameter test, I'm not going to go too crazy. These are dry gels and they all appear to be about the same width. But just for those who like to get pedantic about measurements. Okay, so we're looking at approximately 2.7 millimeters. All right guys, moment of truth. So we're going to have a look at what these look like when they're fully grown. And at a glance, they look very, very consistent. I'm going to take some out now and just drain the water. Yeah, they look really good. All right, let's feel them. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so on top of being slippery, they're actually they're very squishy. I can't think of another gel that they would feel similar to. Maybe like the old style potassium gels that we used to use in the hopper fed blasters. But let's see how much they weigh. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so I've got 5 of these coming at 1.02 grams, which is approximately 0.20 grams. So weight-wise, they seem to be about the same as a Milky, which is pretty cool. Now let's have a look at the diameter of maybe a couple of these. Okay, so that's about 7.25. So that's all right, 7.25. They all look to be fairly much the same width as well, so pretty impressed by them. Now, how about the glow on these things? Let's see. Okay, now to demonstrate how these tracer units work, this one's just been turned on. So there's a little button on the end here. So remember, there was the end that you unscrew and you plug the USB cable into to charge it. The other end has the thread on it, and it's also got a button. You press that button, and when the green light there is flashing, it does like a pulsing flash, 2 or 3 flashes every few seconds. You know that it's turned on. Now that means that the sensor inside is activated. So when an object falls through this, which I'll demonstrate for you now, so I've got one of those gel balls, you'll see the flash of light. I'll do it again. I don't know how easy that is to see on the camera, but I'll try and do one down here where it's a little bit darker. Okay, so you might have seen that little flash in there. So that's really high intensity UV light. That's being flashed at the gel ball as it goes through, which is really good just for conserving power. So you're not constantly leaving this thing on. It's just giving the gel ball what it needs to be able to look like a laser. All right, so next up, I guess we better go and test this thing.